When you're hit with one of the 16 triggers I'll share with you in a second, your brain becomes so busy combating underlying health concerns, it has zero bandwidth for anything else. It's like your mobile phone that has unnecessary programs running in the background that depletes your battery. To turn off those background tasks, your journal practice requires two things. For the past 3 years, I've been on a mission to become unstoppable. To do that, I've had to prioritize key activities every day to optimize my brain, reduce stress, and increase focus. And the only way to stay on track is to keep a daily journal. But typical journals just have you schedule out your day. They can be harmful in more ways than they can be beneficial, especially when you get to the end of the day and you've failed to complete tasks on time. You end up feeling like a failure. The first realization that I had that I needed to biohack my journal practice came after conversations I had with neuroscientists, doctors, and psychologists when researching my book Unstoppable. I've used this practice for the past 1,095 days, and it's gotten me through depression, anxiety, and helped me to hit major deadlines like writing 3 books in 3 years and doing over 2 million in sales. It's based on a powerful understanding that I want you to listen closely to. A positive thought will only hold for as long as your biochemistry supports it. What does that mean for how you approach journaling? Well, I'll get to that in a minute, but first, ask yourself, what would happen to a peak performer if you depleted them of key nutrients, exposed them to side effects from medications, allergies, excessive caffeine use, gut imbalances, or chronic stress? The scientific literature tells us that push through with willpower for a while, but that eventually end up depressed, unfocused, and unproductive, just like the rest of us would. You are that peak performer, but like many, you've most likely been cut off from your capacity to achieve. Think about it. What happened the last time you experienced a mid-afternoon crash? How much work did you end up getting done? Did you end up falling down a social media rabbit hole that negatively rewires your brain to look for quick wins and dopamine hits instead of training it to do deeper, meaningful work? And here's what you must understand. To stay positive and get through your to-do list, you must weed out what sparks a negative attitude from both a biological and psychological standpoint that affects your ability to get the job done on time. When you're hit with one of the 16 triggers I'll share with you in a second, your brain becomes so busy combating underlying health concerns, it has zero bandwidth for anything else. It's like your mobile phone that has unnecessary programs running in the background that depletes your battery. To turn off those background tasks, your journal practice requires two things. The first is to identify what blunts your brain. The second is to prompt you with biohacks that negate their negative effects, and for good reason. But before we get to that, this second realization is a game changer for boosting your productivity. And that is, you are not your excuses. Your excuses are symptoms of your biochemistry. Every single day we're exposed to triggers that can mimic psychological disorders like depression, brain fog, burnout, and fatigue. Trying to check off your task list when you're hit with any of these is like trying to run a race with a broken leg. You may be able to drag yourself over the finish line, but the race is going to be extraordinarily painful and time-consuming. And here's where you need to listen closely. When symptoms of fatigue, brain fog, or even depression are mild, instead of identifying the causes, the self-help industry has trained us to believe it's a weak mental attitude, and we end up blaming ourselves. Unlike a broken leg in which you can see, the causes of a loss of motivation, drive, and focus are invisible to the naked eye. Understanding this meant I needed to massively upgrade my journal practice while still keeping it simple. And the first step was to make a daily checklist of my journal that would take less than 60 seconds for me to work through each morning, that would make the invisible visible, which would give me my power back. The checklist includes everything that can derail my focus, cause brain fog, accounts for both physical and mental stress, excessive caffeine use, and poor ventilation, to name a few. You see, many of your excuses are simply a symptom of low energy, mood and drive. They don't mean you're weak. You're just not optimized and you don't know what will move the needle. And when you look at your excuses as symptoms instead of causes, you must dig deeper to locate the cause if you ever want to break through and become unstoppable. The first thing I do in the morning is to weed out any causes that will set me up for failure. It also does something else that's incredibly important. But first, I want to share with you the actual biohacking journal pages I developed with the 16 triggers. So click the link below and download them for free immediately. The next critical step I had to put in place to increase my productivity were fail-safes and daily prompts to not just manage stress, but upregulate dopamine, increase energy and focus. When I wrote the first edition of Unstoppable, I had just gone on a 90-day mission to biohack my way out of depression, and I had to make sure that the pressure of my book deadline didn't send me into another decline. So I added to my journal pages 13 very specific biohacks I could select from, none of which take more than 10 minutes, and all are designed to boost dopamine and improve mood and focus. Each of the 13 biohacks stack on top of one another and have a compounding effect. They're also included in the free download I've given you. I started doing the hardest one of all when I was living in New York City. This one was absolutely essential to me finishing off the first edition of Unstoppable. Before I'd head off to the New York Public Library to finish writing my book, I'd do the unthinkable. Take a freezing cold shower. Cold showers work much like gentle electroshock therapy for people with depression. It sends electrical impulses to your brain. It lights it up like a Christmas tree. This wakes your system up, increases alertness, energy and clarity, and it releases your happiness hormones, endorphins. A clinical trial showed that taking a cold shower for up to 5 minutes, 2 to 3 times per week, helps to relieve symptoms of depression. And because I was tracking my symptoms and biohacks in my journal for 1,095 days, I gained a deep understanding of what increased and decreased my productivity because I could see patterns unfolding. And I talk about this in depth in my program, Project Unstoppable. When you keep track of the 13 biohacks to optimize productivity and the 16 triggers that can blunt your brain, you start to notice what works and doesn't work for you. Then tomorrow, you adjust. After a few short weeks of keeping track of this in 60 seconds a day, I guarantee you, your energy will suddenly increase. You'll feel the best that you've felt in years and you'll become a productive powerhouse. But it's the next biohack out of 13 that's been absolutely huge for me, and it doesn't require cold water. In fact, it helped me to get through the loss of my father from brain cancer, write 3 books in 3 years, and stay focused on a daily basis. The best part is, it takes just 10 minutes a day. To learn what it is, watch episode 4 in my Becoming Unstoppable video series right now. I'll see you there.